The moment Vincent Quinn saw Sarah Thompson walk into the charity gala, his champagne glass nearly slipped from his hand, and he felt his heart lurch in a way it hadn't in exactly 10 years. She looked different, but somehow exactly the same, her dark hair longer now, falling in waves past her shoulders instead of the short pixie cut she'd worn in college. But those eyes, those warm hazel eyes that used to look at him like he hung the moon, were unmistakable even from across the ballroom. He stood frozen near the bar, watching her scan the crowd with an uncertain expression, clearly uncomfortable in the elegant navy dress she wore. Sarah had never been one for fancy events, had always preferred jeans and sweaters, coffee shop dates over upscale restaurants. That was part of why they'd fallen apart, wasn't it? He'd been building his real estate investment company from nothing, working 18-hour days, missing dates, forgetting anniversaries, and she'd needed someone who could actually be present. When she'd walked away a decade ago, tears streaming down her face as she told him she couldn't be his last priority anymore, he'd been too proud and too exhausted to fight for her. Now, standing in this glittering ballroom wearing a custom suit that cost more than his first car, Vincent Quinn was worth just over $40 million. His company owned commercial properties in 6 states, and he'd just been featured in Forbes as one of the most successful entrepreneurs under 40. He had everything he'd worked for, everything he'd sacrificed for. Everything except the woman who'd once believed in him when he had nothing but ambition and a dream. Sarah still hadn't seen him. She was talking to someone at the registration table, probably checking in as someone's +1, or maybe she worked for one of the nonprofits benefiting from tonight's event. Vincent's mind raced through possibilities. What were the chances she'd be here? Boston wasn't that small of a city, but their social circles had diverged so completely after the breakup that he never expected to see her again. "Vincent, there you are." His business partner, Marcus Chen, appeared at his elbow with a grin. "The mayor wants to meet you, and I think Senator Roberts is about to corner you about that development project." "Give me a minute," Vincent said, his eyes still locked on Sarah as she moved away from the registration table, accepting a glass of wine from a passing waiter. Marcus followed his gaze and let out a low whistle. "Who is she?" "Someone I used to know." Vincent drained his champagne and set the glass down with more force than necessary. "Someone I was an idiot to let go. 10 years ago, they'd been seniors at Boston University. Vincent had been studying business and working 3 jobs to pay tuition, building his first investment deal on the side with money scraped together from tips at the restaurant where he bartended. Sarah had been an education major, passionate about teaching, always volunteering at after-school programs and talking about making a difference in kids' lives. They'd met in a coffee shop at 2 in the morning during finals week, both exhausted and overcaffeinated, and had ended up talking until sunrise. He'd fallen in love with her optimism, her kindness, the way she saw potential in everyone, including him. She'd believed he could build his empire even when he had less than $500 in his bank account. But as the years went on and his business started gaining traction, he'd become obsessed, consumed by the drive to succeed. He'd missed her birthday dinner because of a crucial meeting, forgotten their anniversary because he was closing a deal, canceled weekend plans over and over because work came first. The final straw had been when he'd missed her college graduation. He'd been in New York, negotiating his first major property acquisition, and he'd convinced himself it was more important than sitting through a ceremony. When he'd come home 2 days later, she'd already packed her things. He could still remember her standing in their tiny apartment, tears streaming down her face as she told him she couldn't do it anymore. "I love you, Vince," she'd said, her voice breaking. "But you don't love me back. Not enough. Your work will always come first, and I deserve someone who actually wants to be with me." He tried to argue, told her she was being unreasonable, that he was building a future for both of them. But she'd shaken her head and walked out, and his pride had kept him from chasing after her. He told himself he was better off without the distraction, that she couldn't handle being with someone ambitious, that it was her loss. What an arrogant fool he'd been. In the years since, Vincent had dated other women, had relationships that lasted months or sometimes a year, but nothing ever felt right. No one made him laugh the way Sarah had. No one challenged him or supported him or understood him the way she did. He'd convinced himself he'd moved on, that she was just a memory from his youth, but seeing her now, his chest tightened with the undeniable truth. He'd spent 10 years trying to forget the only woman he'd ever truly loved. "So, are you going to talk to her or just stare like a creep?" Marcus asked. Vincent straightened his tie, trying to calm the nervous energy coursing through him. "I don't know if that's a good idea. When has that ever stopped you? You literally built a $40 million company by taking risks. This is different. Yeah, this actually matters." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Go talk to her before someone else does. I'll handle the mayor and the senator." Before Vincent could respond, Marcus disappeared into the crowd. Vincent took a deep breath and started across the ballroom, weaving between clusters of well-dressed guests. His palms were sweating, which was ridiculous. He'd pitched to billionaire investors without breaking a sweat, had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals with complete composure. But the thought of talking to Sarah Thompson made him feel like that broke college kid again, unsure and terrified of rejection. She was standing near one of the tall windows overlooking the harbor, gazing out at the lights reflecting on the dark water. The sight of her profile, the curve of her neck, the way she held her wine glass loosely in her fingers, all of it so familiar, and yet like something from another lifetime. "Sarah." She turned at the sound of her name and her eyes went wide with shock. "Vincent." For a moment they just stared at each other. Up close, he could see the small changes that time had brought. Fine lines at the corners of her eyes, a maturity in her features that made her even more beautiful than he remembered. But her expression was guarded, careful, nothing like the open warmth she used to show him. "Hi," he said, suddenly feeling stupid and tongue-tied. "I didn't expect to see you here." I could say the same. Her voice was polite but cool, with none of the affection he remembered. "What are you doing at a charity event for literacy programs? My company is one of the sponsors." He gestured vaguely at the banners around the room featuring corporate logos, including Quinn Development Group. "We donated to help fund after-school reading programs." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Quinn Development, that's you?" "Yeah. I've been pretty focused on the business since graduation." "I can see that." She glanced at his expensive suit, the Rolex on his wrist. "You look successful." There was no warmth in the observation, just a statement of fact. Vincent felt a pang in his chest. Once upon a time, Sarah had celebrated every small victory with him, had kissed him breathless when he closed his first deal, had believed in him when he was nobody. Now she looked at his success with the detached interest of a stranger. "What about you?" he asked. "Are you teaching?" "Yes. 4th grade at Thornton Elementary in Dorchester." Her expression softened slightly when she mentioned her job. "I've been there for 8 years now." "That's great. You always wanted to teach elementary school." "Some people actually stick to their plans." The words had a slight edge to them, and Vincent winced. "Sarah, I should go find my friend," she interrupted, already stepping away. "It was nice seeing you, Vincent." "Wait." He reached out instinctively, his hand closing gently around her arm. The contact sent electricity through him, and from the way her breath caught, he thought maybe she felt it too. "Can we talk, please? Just for a few minutes." She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face, her expression conflicted. "I don't think that's a good idea. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Sarah hesitated, and he could see the internal debate in her eyes. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. 5 minutes." He released her arm and gestured toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the main crowd. They walked in silence, and Vincent's mind raced trying to figure out what to say. He hadn't prepared for this, hadn't imagined he'd ever get a chance to speak to her again. When they reached a relatively private spot near a marble column, Sarah turned to face him, her arms crossed defensively. "What do you want to talk about, Vincent? How have you been?" "Really, I've been fine. Good, actually. I love my job, I have great friends, a nice apartment in Jamaica Plain." She paused. "I'm happy." The words hit him harder than they should have. Of course she was happy, why wouldn't she be? She'd moved on, built a life without him, probably didn't spend nights wondering what might have been if he'd made different choices. "I'm glad," he said, and meant it despite the ache in his chest. "You deserve to be happy." "Do I detect actual sincerity? That's new." "I deserved that," Vincent admitted. "I was a terrible boyfriend back then, completely self-absorbed and blind to what I was throwing away." Sarah's expression flickered with surprise. "I don't need your apologies now, Vincent. It was 10 years ago. We were kids. You wanted to build an empire, and I wanted someone who actually showed up. We wanted different things. Did we? Or did I just fail to balance what mattered? Does it matter now?" She looked away, her jaw tight. "You got what you wanted. You're obviously incredibly successful. Good for you." "Sarah, Miss Thompson." A young woman in a staff uniform approached with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we're about to start the program and Miss Rivera is looking for you. Tell her I'll be right there." Sarah turned back to Vincent. "I have to go. My principal is here, and we're supposed to be at a specific table. Can I see you again?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them. "Coffee, dinner, just to catch up properly." She studied him for a long moment, and he held his breath, afraid to move and break whatever spell might make her say yes. "I don't think that's a good idea," she finally said softly. "Take care of yourself, Vincent." She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the crowd moving toward the dining area. Vincent stood there feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. He'd found her after 10 years, and he'd already lost her again. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. Vincent sat at the head table with other major donors, barely touching his food, his attention constantly drifting to where Sarah sat several tables away with a group of teachers and administrators. He watched her laugh at something someone said, saw her lean in to listen intently when the principal spoke, noticed the genuine warmth in her smile. She'd always been like that, fully present with people, giving them her complete attention. It was one of the things he'd loved most about her, and one of the things he'd taken most for granted. During the speeches about literacy programs and at-risk youth, Vincent found himself thinking about the life he'd built. He had money, success, respect in his industry. He had a penthouse apartment with a view of the harbor, a vacation home in the Hamptons, and a luxury car he barely drove because he was always working. He dated beautiful women who understood that his business came first, who didn't ask for more than he could give, and he was lonely as hell. Oh, he had friends. Marcus was a good friend as well as a business partner. He had a circle of acquaintances he golfed with, networked with, attended events with. But there was no one who really knew him, no one he came home to, no one he wanted to share his successes with. He'd achieved everything he set out to do, and somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten why it mattered. The program ended, and guests began mingling again. moving toward the bar and the string quartet playing in the corner. Vincent saw Sarah stand up, speaking briefly with her principal before heading toward the exit. He made a split-second decision and followed her, catching up just as she collected her coat from the check room. "Leaving already?" he asked. Sarah turned, surprised to see him. "It's a school night." "I have to be up at 5:30. Let me walk you out at least." She looked like she wanted to refuse, but finally nodded. They walked through the hotel lobby in silence, the sounds of the gala fading behind them. Outside, the November air was cold, and Sarah pulled her coat tighter around herself. "Do you need a ride?" Vincent asked. "My driver is waiting." "You have a driver now, of course you do." She shook her head. "No, thank you, I took the T and I can take it back. It's late. Please let me at least make sure you get home safely." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression softened. "Why do you care, Vincent? We haven't spoken in a decade." "Because seeing you tonight reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten." He stepped closer, close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and subtle. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid and stubborn to realize it until you were gone." "Don't do this," she said quietly. "Don't romanticize what we had. You made your choice back then. You chose your career over me, and that's fine. You built something impressive, but don't stand here now and tell me you regret it." "But I do." The words came from somewhere deep inside, honest and raw. "I regret it every day. I thought I'd moved on, thought I was over it, but seeing you tonight, I realize I've spent 10 years trying to fill a hole that nothing can fill except you." Sarah's eyes glistened, but she blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears fall. "That's not fair. You can't just show up after all this time and say things like that." "I know, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry for being honest." He paused. "Please, Sarah, just one coffee. Let me prove to you that I'm not the same selfish idiot I was at 22. People don't change that much." "Maybe not. But I'd like the chance to show you how I've tried." She was wavering. He could see it in the way she bit her lower lip, the gesture so familiar it made his heart ache. Finally, she pulled out her phone. "Give me your number." Hope flared in his chest. "Really, I'm not promising anything. But I'll think about it." She handed him her phone, and he entered his number with hands that shook slightly. "If I decide I want to get coffee, I'll text you. But Vincent, if you don't hear from me, respect that, okay?" "Okay." He handed her phone back, and their fingers brushed. The contact lasted only a second, but it sent warmth spreading through him. "Thank you for considering it." She nodded and stepped toward the street to hail a taxi. Within moments, one pulled up. Before getting in, she looked back at him one more time. "You really do look successful," she said. "I hope it was worth it." Then she was gone, the taxi pulling away into the night, leaving Vincent standing on the sidewalk with his heart pounding and his mind racing. He had no idea if she'd actually contact him, but for the first time in years, he felt something other than the drive to close another deal or acquire another property. He felt alive. 3 days passed with no word from Sarah, and Vincent found himself checking his phone obsessively between meetings. Marcus noticed, of course, and commented on how distracted he was, but Vincent couldn't help it. Every notification made his heart jump, hoping it was her. He tried to focus on work. There was a major development project in the South End that required his attention, permits to finalize, contractors to meet with, investors to update. But his mind kept drifting to Sarah. What was she doing? Was she thinking about him at all? Had she already decided against coffee and just hadn't bothered to tell him? On the 4th day, his phone buzzed during a meeting with the architectural firm designing his newest building. Vincent glanced at it and saw an unknown number. His pulse quickened. "I'm free Saturday morning. 10 a.m. at Brewpoint Cafe in Jamaica Plain. Don't be late." He barely suppressed a smile, earning a curious look from the architect mid-presentation. Vincent typed back quickly, "I'll be there. Thank you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "We'll see if you thank me after." The rest of the week crawled by. Vincent found himself more nervous than he'd been before any business meeting, changing his mind half a dozen times about what to wear. Too formal would seem like he was trying too hard. Too casual might seem like he didn't care. He finally settled on dark jeans and a gray sweater, aiming for approachable but put together. Saturday morning, he arrived at Brewpoint Cafe at 9:45, not willing to risk being even a minute late. The cafe was a cozy place with exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the rich smell of fresh roasted coffee. It was nothing like the upscale places Vincent usually frequented, and he loved it immediately. This was Sarah's world, comfortable and authentic without pretense. He ordered a black coffee and claimed a table near the window where he could watch for her arrival. His leg bounced nervously under the table as 10 o'clock approached, then passed. At 10:05, he started to worry she'd changed her mind. At 10:10, he considered texting her but didn't want to seem pushy. At 10:15, Sarah walked through the door and Vincent's breath caught. She wore jeans and an oversized burgundy sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked absolutely beautiful. She spotted him and made her way over, her expression unreadable. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "The tea was delayed." "It's fine, I just got here." The lie came easily, but her raised eyebrow suggested she didn't believe him. Vincent Quinn, early to something. "The world really has changed," he winced. "I deserved that too." Sarah stood back up. "I'm going to order. Do you want anything?" "I'm good, thanks." He watched her at the counter, chatting easily with the barista who clearly knew her. Of course she was a regular here. This was probably close to her apartment, the kind of neighborhood spot where everyone knew each other's names and orders. She returned a few minutes later with a large latte and a blueberry muffin. "So," she said, breaking off a piece of muffin. "Talk. What do you want to know? Why did you really want to meet? And don't give me some line about how I was the one who got away. I want the truth." Vincent leaned back, considering his words carefully. "Okay, the truth. Seeing you the other night was like getting hit by a truck. I've spent the last 10 years building this company, achieving every goal I set for myself, and I thought I was happy. But the moment I saw you, I realized I've been going through the motions. Working constantly, dating people I don't really care about, buying things I don't need. And I couldn't stop thinking about how different my life might be if I'd made better choices back then. You can't change the past. I know, but maybe I can change the future." He met her eyes directly. "I want to know you again, Sarah, not who you were 10 years ago, but who you are now. And I want you to know who I've become, for better or worse." She sipped her latte slowly, studying him. "You hurt me, Vincent, really badly. Do you remember what you said when I told you I was leaving?" He tried to recall, but that whole conversation was a blur of anger and pain. "What did I say?" "You said I was being selfish, that I couldn't handle being with someone successful, that I wanted to hold you back." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the old hurt underneath. "You made me feel like my feelings didn't matter, like wanting to spend time with my boyfriend was somehow unreasonable." Vincent felt sick. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I was defensive and scared and completely out of line. You missed my graduation, Vince. After 4 years of supporting you, of understanding when you had to work, of rearranging my schedule around yours, I asked for one day, one ceremony, and you couldn't even give me that. There's no excuse for it. I was wrong." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "I was so obsessed with proving I could succeed, with showing everyone who thought I'd fail that I could make it, that I lost sight of what actually mattered. I lost you, and it's been the biggest regret of my life. Why should I believe you've changed? I don't know that you should. I can tell you that I've spent the last 10 years learning, growing up, figuring out what success actually means. I have all this money and all this stuff, and none of it makes me happy. The only time I felt truly alive in the past decade was seeing you at that gala. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, picking at her muffin. I've thought about you over the years, wondered how you were doing, if you achieved everything you wanted. I even Googled you once and saw an article about your company. You looked happy in the photos. Photos lie. I'm good at business, Sarah. I'm good at making money, at closing deals, at reading markets, but I'm not good at being happy. I don't know how to be, not without, he stopped himself. Not without what? Not without someone to share it with. Someone who knows me, really knows me, and cares anyway. You could have anyone, Vincent. Some glamorous woman who fits into your world. I don't want anyone, I want you. The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable. I know I have no right to ask for another chance. I know I burned that bridge spectacularly, but I'm asking anyway. Let me take you to dinner. Let me show you I've learned how to be present, how to prioritize what matters. This is crazy. We don't even know each other anymore. So let's get to know each other. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people having dinner and conversation. Sarah looked out the window, watching people walk by on the street. Vincent waited, barely breathing, giving her space to think. Finally, she turned back to him. One dinner, but I have conditions. Anything. No fancy restaurants, somewhere normal where we can actually talk. And you have to promise that if I decide this is a mistake, you'll respect that and leave me alone. I promise. Relief and happiness flooded through him. When? Give me your phone. He handed it over and she entered her number, then texted herself so she'd have his. I'll let you know. I need to think about this, figure out my schedule. Whatever works for you, I'll make it work. She stood up, gathering her coffee and muffin. I should go. I have lesson planning to do. Vincent stood as well. Thank you for meeting me. It means more than you know. Sarah nodded but didn't smile. Don't make me regret this, Vincent. I won't. I swear. She left and he sank back into his chair, his heart racing. It wasn't much, just a promise of dinner, but it was more than he'd hoped for. He had a chance, however slim, to make things right. Over the next week, they texted sporadically. Nothing deep, just small exchanges. Sarah sent him a photo of a hilarious spelling mistake one of her students had made. He sent her a picture of the harbor from his office window. She asked about his work, and he told her about the South End project, surprised by how much he wanted to share the details with her. She told him about her students, about the 9-year-old who'd finally learned to read chapter books, about the grant she was writing to get more classroom supplies. Her passion came through in every message, and Vincent found himself captivated all over again by her dedication. On Wednesday, she texted him. Friday night, 7 p.m. Do you know Antonio's in the North End, the Italian place on Hanover Street? That's the one, meet me there. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Vincent cleared his schedule for the entire evening, ignoring Marcus's teasing about how smitten he was. He arrived at Antonio's at 6:45, too nervous to be fashionably late. The restaurant was a small, family-owned place with red checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and fresh bread. Nothing fancy, nothing trying to impress anyone, just good food and warm atmosphere. Sarah arrived exactly at 7, wearing a simple green dress that brought out the flecks of color in her hazel eyes. They were seated at a corner table, and for the first few minutes, there was an awkward silence as they looked at their menus. Their lasagna is incredible, Sarah said finally. And the tiramisu is worth saving room for. You come here often. My friend Jennifer and I have a monthly dinner date here. It's our favorite spot." The waiter came and took their orders. Wine for Sarah, water for Vincent, who wanted to stay completely clear-headed. When they were alone again, Sarah folded her hands on the table. "So, tell me about Quinn Development. How did you build it?" He'd expected her to ask about them, about his feelings, about why he'd really wanted this dinner. The business question caught him off guard, but he went with it. "After we broke up, I threw myself into work completely." "I know, shocking," he added with a self-deprecating smile. "I'd already bought my first property, a rundown apartment building in Quincy. I renovated it on a shoestring budget, doing some of the work myself, and flipped it for twice what I paid. Used that money to buy 2 more properties, then 5, then 10. Within 3 years, I had a portfolio of residential buildings. Then I started moving into commercial real estate." That must have taken incredible focus. It did. It also took basically giving up any semblance of a personal life. "I worked 18-hour days for years, lived on coffee and takeout, fell asleep at my desk more times than I can count." He paused. "I told myself I was building something important, but honestly, I think I was just running from the fact that I'd screwed up the best thing in my life." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Vincent, no, let me finish. I need to say this." He took a breath. "About 2 years ago, I was closing a major deal. $20 million commercial property downtown. It was huge, everything I'd been working toward. I was in the office with Marcus and our lawyers, signing the papers, and I should have been thrilled. But all I could think about was how empty it felt. There was no one to call and celebrate with, no one who actually cared beyond how it affected them professionally. And I realized I'd built this entire empire and I had no one to share it with." "So you tried dating?" "Yeah. I dated a lawyer for a year. She was smart, successful, beautiful. We went to events together, traveled to Paris and Barcelona. On paper, it was perfect, but there was nothing real there. We didn't actually connect, didn't really know each other beyond surface level. It ended mutually and without much feeling either way. Their food arrived and they ate in silence for a few minutes. The lasagna was as good as Sarah had promised, rich and perfectly seasoned. "What about you?" Vincent asked. "Have you been seeing anyone?" Sarah set down her fork. "I dated someone for 3 years. His name was David and he was a good man. Kind, reliable, showed up when he said he would." There was something wistful in her voice. "We broke up about 6 months ago." Vincent tried not to feel pleased about that and failed. "What happened?" "He proposed and I said no." She met his eyes. "He wanted to get married, have kids, the whole traditional path. And I cared about him, I really did. But I didn't love him the way he deserved to be loved. It wouldn't have been fair to marry him when my heart wasn't fully in it." That must have been hard. It was. He was angry at first, said I'd wasted his time. But eventually he understood we wanted different things. She paused. "Actually, that's not true. We wanted the same things. I just didn't want them with him." The admission hung between them, loaded with implication. Vincent wanted to ask if that meant she'd never gotten over him, but he held back, not wanting to push too hard too fast. "Tell me about teaching," he said instead. "What's the best part?" Sarah's face lit up, and Vincent felt his chest tighten at the sight. The moments when something finally clicks for a kid. When they've been struggling with reading or math, and suddenly it makes sense, and you can see the pride in their eyes. Or when a shy student finally raises their hand to answer a question. Those little victories, they're everything. It sounds like you found your calling. I think I did. I mean, it's not glamorous. The pay is terrible, the bureaucracy is frustrating, and I spend half my own money on classroom supplies. But making a difference in these kids' lives, helping shape who they become, there's nothing better. Do you ever wish you'd chosen something more lucrative? No. Money isn't everything, Vincent. The gentle criticism was clear. I have enough to live comfortably, to do things I enjoy. I don't need more than that. I'm not saying money is everything. Just that our society tends to undervalue teachers when they're doing some of the most important work there is. Wow, the capitalist acknowledging that not all value is monetary. Growth. But she was smiling as she said it, taking the edge off. They talked through dinner and dessert, the conversation flowing more easily as time went on. Vincent asked about her family, and she told him her younger brother had gotten married last year, that her parents had retired to Maine. He shared that his mother was still in South Boston, that he'd bought her a house but she refused to move, too attached to her neighborhood. When the check came, Vincent grabbed it immediately, but Sarah reached for her wallet. "I can pay for my half," she said. "I know you can. But please, let me get this. Vincent, consider it an apology for all the dates I missed 10 years ago. I owe you a lot more than one dinner." She relented, and they walked out into the cool November night. The North End was busy with people coming and going from restaurants, the streets narrow and charming with their old-world feel. "Can I walk you to your car?" Vincent asked. "I took the T again." "Then let me walk you to the station." They strolled slowly through the neighborhood, neither in a hurry for the evening to end. At one point, a group of rowdy college students passed them, and Vincent instinctively put his hand on Sarah's lower back to guide her aside. The touch felt natural, right, and he let his hand linger for a moment before dropping it. "This was nice," Sarah said as they approached the station entrance. "Better than I expected, honestly. Can we do it again?" She turned to face him, and in the streetlight he could see the conflict in her expression. "I don't know if that's wise." "Why not?" "Because I spent 3 years trying to convince myself I could love David, and I couldn't. Do you know why?" She didn't wait for him to answer. "Because he wasn't you, and that's not fair to either of us. You're not the same person you were, and neither am I. We can't just pick up where we left off." "I don't want to pick up where we left off. That relationship ended for good reasons, but I want to build something new if you'll let me." "Vincent, you broke my heart. Like, really broke it. It took me years to put myself back together. I'm scared to let you in again." He stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes. "I know, and I hate that I did that to you. But Sarah, I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to give me a chance to earn your trust back, however long that takes. What if we try this and it doesn't work? What if you get bored with me, or I can't handle your lifestyle, or we're just too different now? Then at least we'll know. We can walk away with no regrets, no what-ifs." He paused. "But I don't think that's what will happen. I think we'll realize what I already know, that you're the person I should have fought for 10 years ago." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, there was a vulnerability there that made his heart ache. "One more date. But Vincent, I mean it. You have to be honest with me. If your work is still your priority, if you're still the guy who misses important things for meetings, tell me now. I can't go through that again. I promise you, I've learned that lesson. Work is important, but it's not everything. Not anymore." He wanted to kiss her so badly, to pull her close and show her how much he meant it, but he held back. "Too soon. When can I see you again?" "I have parent-teacher conferences next week, so my evenings are booked." "The following Saturday." "Perfect. And Sarah, can we text between now and then?" "I liked hearing about your students." A small smile played at her lips. "Yeah, we can text." She went down into the station, and Vincent stood there grinning like an idiot. A businessman in a suit gave him an odd look as he passed, but Vincent didn't care. He felt 22 again, full of hope and possibility. Over the next week and a half, they texted constantly. Good morning messages and good night texts, photos throughout the day, random observations and jokes. Sarah sent him a picture of a student's drawing of her that made her look like a potato with arms. He sent her a photo of the view from a property he was scouting, asking if she thought the neighborhood would be good for families. The text conversations started flowing into phone calls. The first one happened when Sarah texted him at 9 at night, frustrated about a parent who'd yelled at her during conferences. Without thinking, Vincent called her. "Hey," he said when she answered. "Want to talk about it?" She did, venting for 20 minutes about unreasonable expectations and parents who blamed teachers for their kids' struggles. Vincent listened, asking questions, offering sympathy, and by the end she was calmer. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed that. Anytime." "Seriously, Sarah. Call me whenever you need to vent or talk or anything." After that, phone calls became regular. She called him from her car after work, and he called her during his evening walks around the harbor. They talked about everything and nothing, falling into an easy rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Their second official date was brunch at a cafe in Cambridge, followed by a walk along the Charles River. It was a bright, cold December Saturday, and Sarah wore a red winter coat that made her look like she'd stepped out of a holiday movie. "I haven't been here in forever," she said as they strolled along the path, watching runners and cyclists pass by. David wasn't really into outdoor activities. "What did you guys do together?" "Honestly, we went to dinner a lot, watched TV, occasionally visited his family. It was comfortable but not particularly exciting." "What do you want?" "In a relationship, I mean." She thought about it, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "I want someone who makes me laugh, who challenges me and supports me, who has their own passions but makes time for us, someone who sees me as a priority, not an obligation." She glanced at him. "What about you?" "I want someone who calls me out when I'm being an idiot, who reminds me there's more to life than work, who I can't wait to come home to at the end of the day." He paused. "Someone who makes me want to be better than I am." "That sounds nice." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, and then Vincent took a chance and reached for her hand. She stiffened for just a second, then relaxed, lacing her fingers through his. The feeling of her hand in his was both thrilling and peaceful, like coming home after a long journey. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Sarah said suddenly. "That's a dangerous game. I'll go first." "I kept one of your old T-shirts after we broke up. The BU one you used to wear all the time. I slept in it for months until it didn't smell like you anymore, and then I felt pathetic and threw it away. But sometimes I still wish I had it." Vincent's throat tightened. "I kept a photo of us. It's in my wallet. Has been for 10 years. She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Really?" He pulled out his wallet and opened it, showing her the small, worn photo tucked behind his driver's license. It was from their senior year, both of them at a friend's birthday party. Sarah laughing at something with her head on his shoulder, Vincent looking at her like she was the only person in the world. "I've closed $1 million deals with that photo in my pocket," he said quietly. "Every time I looked at it, I told myself I was working towards something. But really, I think I just couldn't let you go completely." Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why didn't you fight for me? When I left, why didn't you chase after me and tell me you'd change?" "Because I was an arrogant idiot who thought I didn't need to change. I thought you'd come back, that you'd realize I was worth the sacrifice. By the time I understood how wrong I was, I figured you'd moved on and you were better off without me." "I wasn't better off. I was heartbroken and angry and so sad. I'm sorry." He cupped her face gently with his free hand, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I'm so sorry I hurt you. If I could go back and do it differently, we can't go back. We can only go forward. Then let's go forward, together." She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "I'm scared." "Me too." He rested his forehead against hers. "But I think you're worth being scared for." When she opened her eyes, something had shifted. The walls she'd been keeping up crumbled a little, and he could see the Sarah he remembered, the one who'd loved him completely. "Kiss me," she whispered. Vincent didn't need to be told twice. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she met him halfway. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them relearning each other. Then Sarah's free hand came up to his neck, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened. 10 years of longing and regret and hope poured into that kiss, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Wow," Sarah said. "Yeah." Vincent smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Does this mean you'll give us a real chance? I'm going to regret this, aren't I? Not if I have anything to say about it." They resumed walking, but now they were closer, shoulders bumping, still holding hands. Vincent felt lighter than he had in years, like a weight he'd been carrying had finally lifted. As December progressed, they fell into a pattern. Dates on the weekends, phone calls most nights, texts throughout the day. Vincent found himself rearranging meetings to make sure he was available when Sarah got out of school. He left work at reasonable hours, turning down evening events if they conflicted with plans with her. Marcus noticed the change and approved, saying Vincent seemed happier than he'd ever been. 2 weeks before Christmas, Sarah invited him to her apartment for the first time. It was a cozy one-bedroom in a triple-decker house, with hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves crammed with novels and teaching materials. The walls were decorated with student artwork and photos of friends and family. It was warm and lived in and completely Sarah. "It's not much," she said, watching him look around. "It's perfect. Very you." He paused at a corkboard covered in photos. There was one of Sarah with a group of women, all laughing over drinks. Another of her with her family at what looked like Thanksgiving. Several of her students in various classroom settings. "That's my life," she said, coming to stand beside him. "My friends, my family, my kids. Nothing glamorous or exciting. I think it's beautiful. You've built a real life, Sarah. Not just a career or a bank account, but actual connections and meaning. Is that what you want, this kind of life?" He turned to face her. "What I want is to be part of your life, however that looks." She'd made dinner. Pasta with homemade sauce that reminded him of their college days when they'd cooked together in their tiny apartment. They ate at her small kitchen table, talking and laughing, and it felt more right than any fancy restaurant date ever had. After dinner, they moved to the couch, and Sarah turned on a movie, some romantic comedy she'd been wanting to see. Vincent pulled her against his side, and she settled there like she belonged. Halfway through the movie, she turned to look up at him. "I love you," she said quietly. "I never stopped, even when I wanted to. Even when I was with David, trying so hard to move on, it was always you." Vincent's heart felt like it might burst. "I love you too, so much. I've loved you for 10 years, even when I was too stupid to realize it." They kissed soft and sweet, and then Sarah pulled back with a mischievous look in her eyes. "Want to see my bedroom? Are you sure? Very sure. I've waited 10 years to have you back in my bed. I'm not waiting another minute." Later, wrapped in her sheets with Sarah curled against his chest, Vincent felt complete in a way he never had before. Her apartment was small, her bed was lumpy, and the radiator clanged loudly, but he wouldn't have traded it for anything. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Sarah propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "What? Move in with me? My penthouse has plenty of space, amazing views, and a bed that doesn't try to kill your back." "Vincent, that's crazy. We've been dating for like a month." "We dated for 3 years in college, and we've loved each other for a decade. I'd say we've already done the getting to know you phase. I can't afford a penthouse. I'm not asking you to pay rent. Just live with me." Bring your books and your student artwork and make it feel like a home instead of just a place I sleep." She was quiet for a long moment, and Vincent worried he'd pushed too far too fast. But then she smiled. "Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need." Christmas came, and they spent it with Sarah's family in Maine. Her parents were welcoming, though her father clearly remembered Vincent from before and was cautiously protective. Her younger brother, Nathan, pulled Vincent aside after dinner. "You hurt my sister pretty badly last time," Nathan said bluntly. "If you do it again, I don't care how rich you are, I'll make you regret it." "I understand. And I give you my word, I'm not the same guy I was then. Sarah is my priority, my everything. I'm not going to screw this up again." Nathan studied him, then nodded. "Good, because she's been happier these past few weeks than I've seen her in years. Don't waste that." On New Year's Eve, Vincent took Sarah to his penthouse for the first time. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, the city lights spread out below them, and shook her head in disbelief. "This is where you live. This is insane, Vincent. Too much. It's gorgeous. But it doesn't feel like you. It's all marble and glass and modern furniture. Where's the personality? That's why I need you here, to make it actually feel like a home." They watched the fireworks from his balcony at midnight, champagne in hand, and when the sky lit up with color, Vincent pulled Sarah close and kissed her like his life depended on it. "I have something for you," he said when they broke apart. "Vincent, you've already given me too much. The necklace at Christmas was this is different." He pulled a small box from his pocket and her eyes went wide. "Is that what I think it is? Probably not. Just open it." Inside was a key. Sarah looked at it, confused, then up at him. "It's a key to this place. I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet, but I am asking you to move in with me. Make this space ours. Clutter it up with books and teaching supplies and whatever else you want. I don't want to spend another night without you." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but she was smiling. "You're serious about this? Completely serious? I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to hear about your students over dinner. I want to build a life with you, Sarah. The life we should have had all along. Okay. Okay. Yes, you crazy man. I'll move in with you." She threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at the same time. "But I'm bringing all my stuff, and you're going to have student artwork on your fancy walls. I wouldn't have it any other way." Sarah moved in that January, and true to her word, she transformed the penthouse. Books appeared on the previously empty shelves. Colorful artwork went up on the walls. Throw blankets and pillows made the sleek furniture cozier. Plants added life to the space. It was still elegant, but now it felt lived in, loved in, like a real home. They fell into a comfortable routine. Sarah left early for school, and Vincent kissed her goodbye every morning. He made an effort to be home by 6 most nights so they could have dinner together. On weekends, they explored the city, visited museums, tried new restaurants. Sometimes they just stayed in, cooking together and watching movies, enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company. In March, Sarah's school was facing budget cuts that would eliminate the after-school reading program she'd worked so hard to build. She came home devastated, ranting about the unfairness of it all, how these kids needed that program. "How much would it cost to keep it running?" Vincent asked. "I don't know, maybe $50,000 a year, but the school doesn't have it. Quinn Development does." Sarah stopped pacing and stared at him. "What? We have a charitable foundation. We could fund the program." "Vincent, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Education is important, and if I can help keep a program that makes a difference to kids, why wouldn't I?" She burst into tears and kissed him fiercely. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour." The donation was made anonymously through the Quinn Foundation, but Sarah knew, and her gratitude showed in 1,000 small ways. She left him love notes hidden around the apartment, made his favorite meals, looked at him with such open affection that it made his heart ache. In May, Vincent proposed, not with a grand gesture or public spectacle, but on a quiet Sunday morning in their apartment. They were making breakfast together, Sarah stealing bites of fruit from the cutting board, Vincent scrambling eggs. Sun streamed through the windows and music played softly in the background. "Marry me," Vincent said suddenly. Sarah looked up from where she was setting the table. "What?" He set down the pan and pulled a ring box from his pocket. He'd been carrying it around for weeks, waiting for the right moment, and realized there was no moment more perfect than this one. Their normal life, their everyday routine, the simple happiness of being together. "Marry me, Sarah. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy, supporting your dreams, being the partner you deserve." He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "I should have fought for you 10 years ago. I should have told you every day how much you meant to me. I can't change the past, but I can promise you the future. Say yes." Sarah's hands trembled as she took the ring box. "Are you sure? I mean, I'm just a teacher. I don't fit into your world, you are my world. Everything else is just background noise." He took her hands. "I've never been more sure of anything. You're it for me, Sarah. You always have been." "Yes." She was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. The eggs burned in the pan, forgotten, as they celebrated their engagement. They married that September in a small ceremony at a vineyard in Napa Valley. Just close friends and family. Nothing extravagant despite Vincent's ability to afford whatever Sarah wanted. She wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. He wore a classic tuxedo and couldn't stop grinning. When he saw her walking down the aisle toward him, Vincent felt tears prick his eyes. This woman, this incredible, kind, passionate woman, was choosing to spend her life with him. He didn't deserve her, but he'd spend every day trying to be worthy of her love. Their vows were personal and heartfelt. Sarah promised to support his dreams while keeping him grounded. Vincent promised to never take her for granted, to show up for the important moments, to love her completely. 10 years ago, I let you walk away because I was too stubborn to see what mattered," Vincent said, his voice thick with emotion. "I spent a decade building an empire and it meant nothing without you. You're my home, Sarah, my purpose, my everything. I promise to spend the rest of our lives showing you how much you mean to me." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The reception was joyful and intimate, filled with laughter and dancing. Marcus gave a toast about how Vincent had been miserable for years, until Sarah came back into his life. Sarah's brother Nathan welcomed Vincent to the family with a warning look that made everyone laugh. Sarah's principal spoke about what an incredible teacher and person Sarah was, how lucky her students were to have her. As they danced to their song, Sarah looked up at Vincent with those hazel eyes full of love. "No regrets, not a single one. Just that we wasted 10 years. Then we'll make up for it. I'll love you twice as hard to make up for lost time. Deal." 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter, Lily Sarah Quinn. She had Vincent's dark hair and Sarah's eyes, and from the moment she was born, she had both of them wrapped around her tiny fingers. Sarah took maternity leave, and Vincent rearranged his schedule to be home more, not wanting to miss a single moment. He'd learned his lesson about priorities. They bought a house in Brookline with a big backyard and good schools. Sarah went back to teaching part-time, unable to give it up completely, but cutting back to spend more time with Lily. Vincent promoted Marcus to co-CEO and stepped back from some of his responsibilities, realizing that he didn't need to be involved in every decision. Life was full and busy and sometimes chaotic with a toddler running around, but it was perfect. Vincent would come home to find Sarah on the floor with Lily, building blocks or reading books, and his heart would swell with gratitude. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to the Brewpoint Cafe where they'd had their first coffee after reconnecting. It was a Saturday morning, and Lily was with Sarah's parents for the weekend. "Remember sitting here 5 years ago?" Sarah asked, sipping her latte. "I was so nervous. So scared you'd hurt me again. Remember sitting here 10 years ago when I was terrified you'd say no to coffee? We've come a long way. The best journey of my life." Vincent reached across the table to take her hand. "Thank you for giving me another chance. For seeing who I could become instead of just who I was. Thank you for proving me right. For showing up, for being present, for loving me the way I always hoped you would." They sat there holding hands, watching the neighborhood wake up around them, and Vincent thought about the path that had led them here. The ambition that had driven him, the success he'd achieved, the loneliness that had plagued him, and finally, the reconnection that had saved him. He'd been a millionaire when he found Sarah again, successful by every traditional measure. But he'd been empty, hollow, going through the motions of a life that looked good on paper but felt meaningless. Sarah had filled that emptiness, had reminded him what mattered, had given him purpose beyond profit margins and property portfolios. She'd always been the one. He'd just been too blind to see it the first time around. But he saw it now, clear as day. And he'd spend the rest of his life grateful for the second chance they'd been given, for the love they'd rebuilt, for the family they'd created together. Later that afternoon, as they walked hand in hand through the public garden, Sarah stopped suddenly. "What?" Vincent asked. "Nothing. I just wanted to remember this moment. You, me, the sun on the water, knowing we get to go home to our daughter and our life. It's perfect. You're perfect, smooth talker." But she was smiling as she kissed him. They continued walking, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the future while appreciating the present. Vincent thought about the scared, ambitious 22-year-old he'd been, so focused on proving himself that he'd lost sight of what he was working for. That kid would barely recognize the man he'd become, and Vincent was glad for it. Success meant something different now. It wasn't about how much money he had or how many properties he owned. It was measured in Sarah's laugh, in Lily's first words, in quiet Sunday mornings and busy weekday evenings. It was found in showing up, in being present, in choosing love over ambition. He'd reconnected with Sarah after a decade and discovered what he should have known all along. She was the one. She'd always been the one. And he'd spend the rest of their lives making sure she never doubted how much she was loved, how much she was cherished, how completely she'd changed his world. That evening, they picked up Lily from Sarah's parents' house. Their daughter ran to them with open arms, shrieking with joy, and Vincent scooped her up, breathing in her baby shampoo scent. Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them, and they stood there in the driveway, a family, complete. "I love you," Vincent murmured to Sarah over Lily's head. "I love you too. Always have, always will." As they drove home through the city lights, Lily chattering about her adventures with Grandma and Grandpa, Vincent reached over to squeeze Sarah's hand. She squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was everything: forgiveness, trust, commitment, and a love that had survived separation and time. They'd lost 10 years, but they had a lifetime ahead of them. And Vincent intended to make every single day count, to be the man Sarah deserved, the father Lily needed, the partner who showed up and stayed present. He'd learned his lesson the hard way, but he'd learned it completely. Some people never get a second chance at their one great love. Vincent had gotten his, and he'd never take it for granted again. Sarah had been the one 10 years ago. She was the one now, and she'd be the one for the rest of their lives. He was absolutely certain of it, and that certainty filled him with a peace and happiness he'd never thought possible. This was success. This was everything that mattered, and he'd been wealthy beyond measure the moment Sarah Thompson agreed to give him another chance.